Greetings, cyberdogs and scrapsters from all over the world. This is Rendog coming at you from another episode of Scrappy Racers. In the previous episode, we put together our most magnificent and most complicated Scrappy Racer to date, known as the Wasp. And in this episode, my friends, we are going to be creating a Scrappy Racer called the Mars Rover Racer. And man, it is going to be absolutely awesome. Now, the Wasp got down the drag strip in 23 seconds, or to be more precise, in 22.9 seconds flat. And I was convinced that we had broken all records in that race, but actually the Cobra Racer still holds the record for the fastest Scrappy Racer doing the race in 22 seconds. So the Wasp, even though it was amazing, it handled like a beast, it looked like it was cruising down this drag strip, it was a second slower than the Cobra, and for that reason, it's going to get a 9 out of 10 on the Scrapper-meter today, guys. I really wanted to give it a 10 out of 10, but I couldn't justify it. If it had beaten the Cobra, it would have been an easy 10. But I think, to be fair, we have to make sure that our Scrappy Racers are rated fairly. And I think a 9 out of 10 does this little bad boy quite a lot of justice. Now, in today's episode of Scrappy Racers, my friends, we are going to be undertaking a pretty ambitious project. I am going to try and recreate the Mars Rover lander and turn that bad boy into a Scrappy Racer. I'm going to try and get some mechanics into it. It's going to have an arm with a camera on it and all of that sweet ass jazz. And if anything, it should turn out looking really, really awesome. No idea if I can pull it off, guys, but let's get ourselves over to the Scrapyard workshop and get scrappinated. Well, it's another glorious day here in Scraptopia. The sun is high in the sky, although to be fair, the sun actually never goes down in Scrap Mechanic, which is actually a little bit creepy. Yeah, it's a bit surrealistic, to be honest. It feels like I'm in frickin' Norway or something. But anyway, guys, I'm super pumped for today's episode, trying to recreate the Mars Rover lander and turning that bad boy into a Scrappy Racer. No idea if I'm going to be able to do it or not. A pretty ambitious project, to be fair, but I'm going to give it my best go. Now, before I get a crackin' with this build, guys, there's just something I want to talk about very quickly, and that's basically just to talk about a question that a lot of you guys have been asking me in the comments of Scrappy Racers. That question being, Rendog, why don't you make more Scrappy Racer episodes, man? Make more of these episodes, we love them. And guys, I know you guys absolutely love the series, you're enjoying it so much, but I just have to tell you that I really love this game and I really love this series, and the last thing that I want to do is feel pressured to make videos on YouTube and basically kill the game for myself. When I'm having fun on Scrap Mechanic is when I'm inspired, when I have a really cool idea, and when I'm able to pull it off for you guys and put together a sweet video. And if that means one video a week or one video every couple of weeks, then that's just how it's going to be, my friends. And hopefully every Scrap Mechanic video that I make for you will be as good as it can possibly be, rather than being a whole ton of Scrap Mechanic videos that are sort of low quality. I'm trying to go for a quality over quantity approach for Scrappy Racers, and I hope you guys get that, man. Alright, with all that jazz out the way, my friends, let's get scrappinating. And today, we are making a Mars Rover Racer. And this is going to be absolutely freaking awesome. Basically, what I'm trying to do, in a nutshell, is recreate the Mars Rover lander. Now, for those of you guys who don't know what that is, well, I don't know where you've been. You've clearly not been on planet Earth for the last couple of years. But basically, humankind has managed to land a rover on Mars. And that rover is currently roaming around the Mars planet, looking around, taking pictures, taking samples, and all of that sort of sweet jazz. An absolutely magnificent achievement for humankind. And I want to sort of, pay homage to that achievement, that scientific breakthrough, and build a Mars Rover Scrappy Racer. Now guys, I've put in a couple of hours of research into the Mars Rover lander and how it was put together, and I gotta tell you, man, it is a magnificent machine. Not only is it basically a science laboratory on wheels on another planet, it also has a very unique and very interesting suspension system known as the rocker bogie suspension system. And I'm going to try and recreate this suspension system for our Scrappy Racer today because I think it's actually really, really cool, and I think it's a really interesting project to try and undertake. Now, this suspension system is interesting because it doesn't use any springs of any kind, right? It's a springless suspension system, and basically what it does is it's a suspension system that works on a number of different points. Now, because the rocker bogie suspension system doesn't use any springs for shock absorption, it has to make use of some other interesting techniques, and I'm going to try and recreate those techniques now on this side of our Mars Rover Racer, and in the process I'm going to try to explain to you guys exactly how this works. So basically the way that the suspension system works is that the wheels, or the axles of the wheels, pivot on two different bearings. Okay, so we have a bearing over here which pivots the overall wheel structure of the rocker bogie suspension system, and then we're going to have a secondary pivot over here. Now this secondary pivot is going to be pivoting two of the wheels, and this primary pivot is going to be pivoting the front wheel and the two back wheels. Okay guys, there we go. I've managed to install a very basic version of the rocker bogie suspension system. We've got our primary pivot bearing here, our secondary pivot bearing here, and when we get to wire this sucker up, guys, it'll make a lot more sense to you. But essentially what's happening is that this entire wheel structure here, all three wheels, are pivoting on the primary bearing here, and then the back two wheels are pivoting on the second bearing over here, and that allows the suspension system to function without any springs. It'll make a lot more sense when we do our first test run, guys. Okay guys, so let's install the second rocker bogie suspension system onto our rover, and while we're doing this, let's have a little chat about the design for this Scrappy Racer and exactly what we're going to be doing for it. What I'm thinking is that we try and make it as scientific and as complicated looking as possible, right? I want a ton of wires, I want a ton of pipes, I want little mechanisms and screens and machines and buttons and as much of that jazz as possible. I think what we'll also do actually is install one of those, the arm that you see on the rover. You know, it has this arm with the camera thing at the end of it, and it sort of collects samples with that arm, and maybe we can mechanize that arm too. Oh yeah, that's going to be absolutely awesome. And maybe what we could do is install like a camera over here or something, and just try and make the thing look as scientifically awesome as possible, right? I think that's going to be the goal for it, and to do that, I think I'm going to use as sort of minimalistic blocks as possible. I want to use these sort of straight line blocks, these blocks that have pipes in them, that looks like it's got wiring in it. I want to try and make it look as scientific and as Mars Rovery as I possibly can, using what we have in Scrap Mechanics. So yeah, quite a challenge, but I'm up for it. You know what I've just realized, guys? This build is all about the details. If we want to get this thing looking as scientific and as awesome as possible, it needs to follow the rules of a scientifically designed machine. And that is, of course, the rule of perfection, right? Everything has to be absolutely perfect. So, for example, these corner ducts over here that are connecting up to each other, I need to make sure that if there is a bearing over there, then the square part of that corner duct is connected to that bearing, right? Because check at that, man. That looks really, really cool, how that sort of pipe goes into the bearing and then comes out of the bearing. And I think I've messed it up over here. Yeah, look at that, I messed it up. So I'm basically going to have to redo this entire leg. Oh my goodness. Man, the devil is definitely in the freaking details for this Scrappy Racer build, my friends. I just spent a bunch of time making sure that all of these pipes are looking amazing. And look at that, right? By just aligning these corner ducts correctly, it really makes it feel really mechanical, really scientific. We've got these pipes running all the way through. You can imagine these being hydraulic pipes or something like that. That looks really, really sweet. Let's just make sure that everything is connected properly. Oh, dang it. Okay, finally got the rocker bogie suspension systems installed. That actually took much longer than I thought it was going to. But anyway, they are looking absolutely awesome. Let's move on to the next step, guys, which is of course to install some power into this bad boy. And I reckon we use some electric engines for this jazz. And the reason for that is because, of course, the Mars Rover is 100% electric. There ain't no gas up in that sucker. And because I think the electric engines look really sweet. They have this sort of barrel look to them. And when we're looking at the Mars Rover from the side, eventually when it's on the ground, I reckon that's going to look really, really cool. Okay, that's looking super badass, guys. 4 electric engines and 2 thrusters. This might be a little bit overkill, but you know what? This is going to be a pretty big Scrappy Racer, man. Look at this thing. It's absolutely massive. And on top of that, we want to get down that drag strip at pace. So, yeah, I think we'll stick to this and see what happens. Oh baby, this thing is starting to look pretty badass, am I right? Looking more like an actual racer and less like a rover at the moment, so I think what we need to do, guys, is work on the chassis a bit. Now, one of the most distinguishing features about the Mars Rover itself is that the top side of the rover is basically one giant solar panel, right? And we have these really cool blocks, actually, that we can use called a staircase step, and look at that. That actually may not look exactly like a solar panel, but it's definitely got a solar panel vibe to it, right? I kind of dig that, man. I think that looks pretty cool. And maybe what we could do is use these wedges to try and accentuate that sort of solar panel feel to it. So if we added like a little skirt to the thing, a little bit like this, right? Just do this all the way across. That's going to make the top of the rover really, really flat. And hopefully that texture of that staircase thing will feel a bit like a solar panel. Look at that. That's looking pretty solar panel-y, isn't it? I'm digging that, man. I'm feeling that. You know what, my friends? This might be one of those builds where asymmetry is actually a good thing, right? Let me try and explain. If you have a look at the Mars Rover now, if you have a look at pictures of it, it has all of this weird scientific equipment all over it, and it's definitely not a symmetrical vehicle. I mean, the wheels are symmetrical, of course, and the shape of it is symmetrical, but as far as what's on top of the vehicle, there's a whole bunch of random stuff all over the place. And I reckon we could try and emulate that by adding a few scientific bits and bobs on top of here. So what I'm trying to install over here is some sort of an arm mechanism, and I reckon we get it installed on top of this pipe thing, and that helps to sort of break up the flatness of the surface a bit. And here's what I'm thinking, right? Let's see if we can actually get this done. This might be really cool. So if we have an arm that goes up like this, right? Something like that. Then, using some bearings and using some control mechanisms, we could have an arm that comes all the way out like this, right? We're just going to do some rough stuff for now. Oh my goodness, I put a pipe on the roof of the of the scrapyard, my bad. So it's going to come out like this, right? And then it might come down again like a so. And then at the very end of this thing might be some sort of a scientific head, right? And on this head could be, I don't know, eyeballs, slash cameras, sample collectors, stuff like that, right? Could be something like that. And maybe we could use a controller to control this arm so it could go back and forth, scanning the ground in front of it for samples while we are racing. I have no idea if this is going to work out, but let's see if I can pull it off, man. I think that could be pretty damn sweet. Okay guys, let's have a little bit of technical fun now and experiment with creating some sort of a scientific sample collecting arm mechanism thingy, if that makes any sense. I reckon we try and make an arm that can bend up and down and go left and right so that we can sort of sweep the ground in front of us with our scientific sample collector. And yeah, if we can pull this off, it'll be pretty sweet. I mean, all we're going to need to do here is use a whole bunch of bearings to be able to twist and turn this arm. So currently we've got a bearing that is going to be, actually this is completely wrong. We've got a bearing that is going to be able to turn the thing left and right. We've got a bearing that's going to be able to turn it up and down over there. And then maybe we stick another bearing over here. Right, let's get it into here like that, and that's going to be able to twist the arm of the scientific collecting mechanism, which could be pretty awesome also. I think we might have to add another hinge in here too, so let's add like one more hinge over here, I guess. There we go, and that's going to be able to allow this arm to bend like a human arm, right? So this is like the elbow, and this is the shoulder over there. Yeah, that looks like it's turning out pretty sweet. And maybe what we could do is at the very end of this arm, we could stick a bearing that will allow it to sort of pivot on itself. And let's sort of try and make this head, the scientific head, out of a different color block. So maybe we make it out of these really cool blue blocks. So maybe it looks a little something like this, right? Let's see, we do a little something like this, and then maybe what we could do is stick like a couple of lights on it, maybe get a couple of cameras on it, right? So let's get a camera and this light thingy on it, and maybe what we could do is have a camera in the front with a couple of lights that's going to be illuminating whatever that camera is looking at, and then we could have some 360 cameras or something on the other side, right? Yeah, that looks pretty cool. And then maybe what we could do is stick a couple of buttons on it just to make it look really cool. So let's get like a couple of these buttons on it, and then maybe at the very top of it we could add some of this wiring or something just to make it look like it's got some sort of a brain or something like that. So let's get up on top of it and see if we could add this on top of it. Yeah, man, check it out. This is going to look pretty damn cool. So something like that. That's not very symmetrical though, so maybe we try something else. Maybe we do something like this, and we complete it with this block over here. Check it out. Boom. Nice. So it's got a camera, it's got some lights, it's got some buttons. Yeah, that's looking pretty cool. I'm not 100% sure what is going on right now with this Scrappy Racer build, but I will say that it is starting to look a little bit like a Mars Rover. I guess the only way to really tell if we are hitting the mark is to get this puppy in the sunshine and do a little bit of cabling. So let's do that, my friends. Look at that. All the freaking bearings just collapsing under the weight of the blocks. We're going to have to spend a bit of time doing some wiring now, guys, to get this thing working. But let's get this sucker in the sunshine, have a look at it. It's looking pretty decent. I really love how it looks underneath. I think that's looking really cool. And I think we could probably do a little bit more detail work underneath here. But all in all, the thing's coming together pretty nicely, I think. Check it out. I added this really cool power box to the back of the rover. You know, this is where it's storing all of its solar energy. I think that's pretty cool. I added this this sort of camera feature also, and I put it on a bearing, and this thing is going to slowly rotate, I think, which will be a pretty cool, neat feature for it. I've added a couple more features here and there too, but what I want to try and work on is getting these different mechanisms actually functioning correctly. So I think I'm going to take this thing off of the lift so that we can get all of the bearings down and broken, and let's get our wiring tool out and see if we can do a little bit of trickery to get this thing working. Let's start with the really easy one, and that's this rotating camera mechanism, right? So the control boxes for these things are back here. Let's use this control box for this. And let's open it up. We're going to set it on always on, so we're going to loop that bad boy. And why don't we do something like, I don't know, it turns 15 degrees, then it turns 30 degrees, then it goes back 15 degrees again, and then back 30 degrees, something like that. So it's going to look like it's scanning the environment, I suppose. And to get this thing triggered off, we're going to need to install a button of some kind, right? So let's get a button down. And yeah, the button's actually going to add to the look of the surface of the rover too, which is pretty sweet. So let's get a button installed. I don't know, we can just probably stick it over here, right? That looks pretty cool. And let's get this connected up to this controller over here, like that. Okay, now when we flick this thing, we should see this camera slowly turning. Oh, look at that. That's awesome. Look at that. It's scanning, man. It's scanning the environment. Oh, that's so sweet. Oh man, this thing is so cool, dudes. Look at it. It's just sort of scanning the environment, looking around. Every now and then it goes left, it goes right. That's absolutely perfect. Loving that. Okay, so that's the easy one. Let's move on to the more complicated one. And that's going to be this arm over here, right? We're going to use the second controller for this. And maybe we can just turn this one off for now, actually, because it's making quite a lot of noise. But let's try and get the second one wired up. So we've got quite a few bearings on this arm. First bearing is going to be that one. Number 2 will be that one. Oh my goodness, things are going absolutely crazy there, man. Let's get this bearing. It's going to be number 3. The next one will be number 4, which should straighten it out. Yeah, there we go. And then we've got one final bearing all the way on the end over there, right? Okay, sweet. So we've got the arm cabled up, and all we got to do now is sort of add a few random sequences into our controller over here, right? And we're going to have to install another button here too. So we probably stick that one on this side. There we go. Nice. Get that cabled up into the... Oops, I think that's the wrong one. Get that connected up to the controller like that. Sweet. Now we can configure the second controller to see if we can try and randomize this sort of sample collecting arm. Oh, look at that, dudes. It looks amazing. Oh, that is so epic. Our Mars Rover Racer is scanning the environment for some samples to collect in its scientific arm thingy. That is so sweet. Basically what I did is I just inputted a whole bunch of random cycles into this controller. As you can see, all of those bearings that we set up for that arm, they just have these random different numbers here and there, and that gives this arm like a life, right? It brings it to life. It really looks like it's doing some scientific work. That is absolutely epic. And of course, when we turn on our camera one also, there we go. We've got our camera scanning in the back. We've got our scientific arm looking for samples. That is absolutely epic. Okay guys, so let's see if I can actually wire up our rocker bogie suspension system correctly and explain to you guys exactly how it's going to work, okay? So we've got a bunch of bearings over here that we're going to connect up to this controller, and essentially what we're going to try and do is force this wheel down at an angle and then force this whole section, which holds these two wheels, down at an angle also, and that's going to create our suspension system. So let's get our controller connected up to these two bearings like that. That's going to push this leg down, and that's going to push this leg down too. And then on this leg we have another couple of bearings, and we want to push each of these wheels individually down also. So we're going to connect up our controller to those two bearings also. Now there's one more bearing that we need to connect up to, and that is the primary bearing over here. And essentially, because of the mechanics of Scrap Mechanic, we can't make this rocker bogie system exactly the way that it is on the Rover, but we can get it pretty close. But to get that done, we're going to need to solidify that bearing, or else the chassis is going to rock back and forth on that bearing over there. So that's it all wired up. Let me get the coordinates input, and then we will have a look at what it looks like. Derp, just realized guys that we haven't installed a turning mechanism for our Mars Rover, which is kind of stupid. We're not going to be able to control the thing as we're cruising down the drag strip. So just installing a very simple turning mechanism here. This should work out just fine. And then we can get everything connected up to the steering wheel. Oh man, this wiring has been absolutely insane, by the way, guys. Check it out. I'm going to bust it out for you now. Let's just make sure that's looking good. Yep, that's looking real good. Nice. Okay, check it out, man. Look at this. It's absolutely ridiculous what's going on here. I kind of have a grasp of what's happening, but I can't be 100% certain I'm doing it correctly. Only time will tell, guys, when we go on our first test drive. But let's connect up the steering wheel to those new bearings that we set up. There we go. That's going to straighten the front wheels quite nicely. Very good. And now we just need to install or connect the front engines again to these wheels. So let's get those installed. I do love me a bit of wiring, I must say, guys. Even when it's as daunting as this, it's one of my favorite parts of Scrap Mechanic. I really enjoy this little part of the game. It's so cool. There we go. Okay, so engines are connected to the wheels. That's looking good. Now we got to get the steering wheel connected to the engines. Okay, so there's the first one, the second one. Wow, what a mess. This is absolutely ridiculous. Okay, there we go, connected there. And of course we have to get the steering wheel connected to the thrusters, which are those light indigo ones back there. So let's get those connected. Very good. Okay, so that's looking pretty decent. Now all we got to do is configure the output power of our engines. So why don't we put it up to about 70% to start with, I think. We don't want to go absolutely crazy here and fly off the side of the map or something. So let's get those engines configured like so. Looking good. Oh, baby. Okay, so that should, in theory, give us an opportunity to do a little bit of a test drive. So let's give this sucker a roll down the initial stretch of drag. And let's have a look. Oh, that's okay. Derp. Welcome back everyone to the Scraptopia drag strip. I have just spent the last 45 minutes of my life trying to configure this Mars Rover Racer, and let me tell you something, guys, it has been an absolutely insane mission. But I think I have finally got to a configuration that works. The thing drives, it gets itself down that road, and it's gonna hit that ramp with a vengeance, and I think we are ready for one more preliminary test. As you guys can see, I've done a few aesthetic adjustments adjustments. I added a couple of wings to the body. It was looking a little bit square for my taste, and I've added a few more details here and there. Added a few more details to the front also, and I gotta say, man, the thing is looking absolutely awesome. I love the way it's turned out. But let's do one more preliminary test, guys. Let's flick on our scientific equipment. We need to do some analysis of the area. Let's make sure that both of those things are working. Yes, our sampling machine is working over there, digging up some samples. Our camera is taking some pictures of the surroundings. Excellent. So let's get into this, the Mars Rover Racer, and see what the handling and so on is like. Well, the handling is pretty good, man. It's a pretty smooth ride. A little bit slow, but you know what, guys? I reckon we're ready for a scrappy race. Ladies and gentlemen, and scrap mechanics from all over the world, welcome to the 7th Scrappy Race of 2016. Drivers, start your engines. DJ, burn that record. Let the race begin in 3, 2, 1, go! And we're off, my friends, for another scrappy race, this time in the Mars Rover Racer. And as you guys can see, the handling is absolutely fantastic, but that is probably because we are going at the speed of freaking snail right now. Listen, we can't be racing too fast because we got to be taking samples here, man. This is a piece of scientific equipment. We can't be traveling too fast. We got to pick up some rocks and some freaking dirt to analyze and whatnot. But all in all, oh my goodness, the handling of this Scrappy Racer is excellent. And I do love the way that this thing looks, man. Looking absolutely badass. Let's get a nice, beautiful view of it, considering we are traveling so slowly. It's going to take about 20 minutes for us to get to that ramp, but as long as we are doing some scientific work, I think it's totally okay. I think we should be coming up to the finish line shortly. Yes, there it is. Come on, Mars Rover, you can do it. Get us all the way to the freaking ramp, baby. There we go, the finish line. We've done it. Nice. It's taken us about 4 years to finish this scrappy race, but you know what? This has been an absolutely awesome scrappy racer to build. I think it's looking so freaking awesome. There's only one last test, whether or not this bad boy can get over the ramp in one piece. Come on, dude, you can do it. Airtime, baby. Oh, derp. Well, that just about does it for today's episode of Scrappy Racers, my friends. I really hope you guys enjoyed the construction of the Mars Rover Racer. I had an absolutely amazing time. I got to do a bunch of research on the Mars Rover, and it was so freaking awesome to learn all about this thing, to learn all about rocker bogie suspension, to try and make rocker bogie suspension in scrap mechanic was a really cool challenge that I enjoyed a lot. And for all of those reasons, I am going to give this Scrappy Racer a 6 out of 10. I know it wasn't the fastest of Scrappy Racers. In fact, it's probably the slowest that we've ever made. But as from a coolness factor, I think that it is really, really cool. But of course, my opinion doesn't really count for much, guys. It's all up to you to decide whether or not this Scrappy Racer gets a garage or gets relegated to the scrap heap. So guys, the time has come to give our Mars Rover Racer a Scrapometer rating of between 1 and 10. Please do that in the comment section below, and there is also a YouTube poll that you can get to in the top right hand corner of this video. Get your Scrapometer rating in, and we will decide whether or not this Mars Rover Racer was a success or not. Well guys, that's it from me, Rendog. I really hope you did enjoy the video, and if you did, hit that like button, and remember to hit that subscribe button if you want to see some more Scrappy Racers on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for watching, my friends, and we will see you all in the next episode of Scrappy Racers. Hey guys, just a little bit of bonus content for you today in today's episode of Scrappy Racers. I wanted to take a drive through the countryside in our Mars Rover, just to give you a view of how the rocker bogie suspension system actually works. And as you can see, those two back wheels are pivoting on top of their secondary bearing. And this is pretty much how it works, man. Looks pretty cool, right? And as you guys can see, this suspension mechanism actually makes us able to drive all over this landscape pretty darn well. Look at this, man. Our rover is actually doing incredibly well around the scrap mechanic world. Man, that is totally awesome. It actually works.